Well, a very, very good afternoon. Welcome. Yes, my name is Andy Carville. We are at Keyboard World. Yes, you probably recognise the studio here. By the way, if you hear any strange drumming in the background, it's the early summer rain pounding on the studio roof, which we've just experienced. But it seems to have stopped at the moment, so hopefully you can't hear anything. Anyway, welcome. Today we're going to split it actually between myself and Paul as well. Paul is here, aren't you, Paul?
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, he's in the background there, which is a bit strange. I always find it a little bit odd that Paul's in my eye line. He just tends to put me off a little bit with his strange clothes and haircut and everything. But welcome indeed. We're going to, for the next 40 minutes or so, is going to be talking about a style of music which may be new to you, but actually has proved very popular here at Keyboard World. As you know, we have a range of different books, and one of those books covers blues. It's about playing the blues. And that's actually been a very, very popular book. In fact, is it our bestseller, Paul? Is it the bestseller?
It is, yeah.
It is the bestseller, which is great. So that's really good news. So we thought I'd spend 40 minutes or so just talking about that style of music and sort of cover the basic content that's actually within that book, that particular blues book. Now, Paul's given me some terrible job to do here. He's left me with some buttons to press, which is not my strength, if I'm really honest with you. So hopefully the screen has changed. Oh, look at that. Yes. Yeah, the screen has actually changed. And now you can see me and the keyboard. I'm using the PA5X here. And you can also see the actual screen. So let's kick off the blues. What are we going to talk about? Well, for many people at home, the art of improvisation seems to be a very mysterious thing. That's cloaked in mystery, and how do you do that, and how do you improvise? Well, we're going to talk about some basics to start you improvising. The first thing we're going to talk about is the 12-bar cycle. It's called a 12-bar blues, but actually, to be honest, it does cover blues, but also it covers lots of different styles of music. Boogie Woogie is based on this same 12-bar sequence. Lots of rock and roll songs, Rock Around the Clock, is indeed a 12-bar blues sequence. So it does cover lots of different styles of music, not only blues. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with what the left hand does, and then we're going to look at how we can get some ideas about improvising with the right hand by looking at some special scales that we can use. Now, I have to say, the first thing for anybody who's never done this before to get used to is simply playing without music. Now, I know that sounds strange, but many home players put a piece of music up on the music rest. Quite understandably, that's what I do most of the time. Put a piece of music up on the music rest, read the music, and it tells you what to do. This is something different. This is going to give you the bare bones of what you have to do, and you, as the player, have to get a little bit creative and create the sound, the song, for want of a better phrase. Now then, let's start. If I press the right button here, fingers crossed, you're going to see a little bit of music crop up. There we go. And this is the basic blues progression. I'm covering 3 different key signatures here. This is a page taken directly out of our blues book. There's 3 different key signatures here, but we're only going to deal with the first one, which is in C major. Now, the 12-bar blues or blues progression can be played in any key you want to. There's a major and a minor version. We're only looking at the major version here. This is just the major progression. And as you can see, hopefully, from home, the progression is actually quite straightforward. As the name suggests, 12-bar blues, it's a 12-bar progression. So we're only dealing on this sheet with the first line and a half. You'll see that after that it changes to F, and then you've got G later on. So we're just looking at the first line and a half. Now, what we've got there is we've got 4 bars of C, 2 bars of F, 2 bars of C, a 1 bar of G, 1 bar of F, and then back to C again. And then you can repeat that progression as much as you want to. So let's just play it for you. I'm going to use the very basic chords here. We're going to just go up a gear in just a moment. But I'm just going to put on the metronome here. And this is counting now at just under 100 beats a minute. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Here we go. So we've got 4 bars of C. 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. 3, 2, 3. It's a bit boring at the minute, to be honest, but it is. It just is. Then to F. 2 bars. 3, 4. 2, 2. Back to C. 3, 2, 3, 4. 2. Then the G. 2, 3, 4. F. 2, 2. C. 2, 3, 4. 2. And then back to the beginning. Around we go again. 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's very easy, very straightforward. I'm going to do 2 things immediately to make this a little bit more bluesy sounding, a little bit jazzier. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to convert all of these chords into 7th chords. That's dominant 7th chords. Don't get that mixed up with major 7ths. So this is a C7 now we're going to play for 4 bars. An F7 for 2 bars. A C7 for 2 bars. G7, F7, C7. And that very last bar, I'm going to introduce a different chord. And I'm going to actually put in there a G7 chord. I'm sure these are chords you all know. I'm sure you'll all know all of these chords. But suddenly that 7th adds a sort of jazzy edge. There's just the C and the C7 with the B flat added. And the F7. And back to the C7. And then we've got a G7. I'm playing a different inversion there. To an F7. A different inversion. Then the C7, and now this extra G7, which is called the turnaround. And that pushes you back to the beginning. And then back to the beginning. So the chord progression becomes this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. C7. 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 F7 now for 2 bars. F7. F7. C7, C7, G7, F7, C7, turn around to G7, and back to the beginning. I'm just adding some rhythmic phrase here with the left hand. Of course, the style's going to do this for me in a moment. Got a G7, F7, C7. Now, when you want to finish, just stay on the C7 and finish. There we go. All done. So you can go round and round in this chord progression as much as you want to. If you want to go through it 24 different times, you can do. It would probably get a little bit boring by then, but you can do it 5 times, 3 times, 6 times, however many times you want to do it. But when you want to finish, key point, finish on a C-based chord. That can be C7, it can just be C. It doesn't really matter. Okay, now let's make it a little bit more interesting and put a style into this. Okay, so up to now I've just used the piano part. By the way, something I must mention. This is your first practice point. So here's a little practice point. Just get used to the chord progression as it's written there until it becomes second nature. Okay? Now, whether you just use a piano sound or a different sound, it doesn't matter. Whether you use a style, it doesn't matter. Okay? But it needs to become second nature. Okay? That's an important point. So a point to practice. So now what we're going to do, we're going to do a little, just a 3-beat, a 4-beat counting. 2, 3, 4. C7, 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 C7. Coming up to F7 now. F7, C7. 2 bars of C7. Here's the G7 coming up. And here's an F7. And here's a C7. To the turnaround, G7. And suddenly it all becomes a lot more interesting. Now, that chord progression, I'm sure, sounds familiar to you. You will have heard that played in many different situations, rock and roll, as I say, boogie woogie, etc. You will have heard that progression of sounds before now. Okay, good. So that's the left hand progression, and I'm only going to do it in C. So we've learned everything we're going to do now. Of course, you can use all of your different drum variations if you want to. You've got breaks, you've got fills. You can make it more interesting, or the keyboard will help you make that a lot more interesting. Now then, we now come to what are we going to do with this hand, with the right hand? Well, this is improvisation. And what are we going to base that on? Where do I start? What do I do? Well, the first thing we're going to look at is something called a C. Well, it's a major blues scale, in this case in the key of C. Okay, so if I can remember which button to press, which I think is 5. There we go. There we go. Oh, look, there it is. Marvellous. I've now written out a C major blues scale and what I've called riff examples. I'll come on to that in just a moment. Let's just look at the top line first of all. This is a very simple scale which you can use to play on top of that chord progression we've just learnt. Now, the notes that we have here are the notes of C, D, E flat, E, G, A, and then up to the top C again, just to finish off the scale. Now, there's an easier way of looking at that, depending on your music theory level. Have you ever played a pentatonic scale? If you haven't, a pentatonic scale is really easy. And the name, penta, means 5. Okay? Now, in a normal scale, there are 7 notes, which is then topped off by the same note, the original note you started off. So let's just do a scale of C. So we start on the note of C, and we play all the black notes. Sorry, all the black notes? All the white notes. And that's a scale of C. Now, the pentatonic scale of C, we just leave out the 4th note and the 7th note. So we're left with C, D, E, G, A, C. Now, that pentatonic scale is actually the heart of this scale that we're looking at here, this major blues scale. We have 1 note added, which actually is an E flat. So this scale again is the pentatonic scale with the note of E flat added in. Okay? So the jazzy note in there, the note that will make it sound like the blues, is that E flat, the 3rd note of the scale. That will make it sound jazzy. So why why does it sound jazzy? Well, if you think about your C7 chord, let me just see if I can just go back to the piano sound. The C7 chord has an E natural in it. So that E flat is going to clash. Yeah? And it's the clash of that E flat note against the E the E natural that's in the C7 chord that creates the bluesy type sound. Now, here's practice point number 2 for you. This is not what we're going to do ultimately, okay? But the first thing you need to do with this is just practice that C major blues scale until you feel really comfortable with the notes in the right hand, that it all falls together without you really thinking about it. So now, all I'm doing there is running up and down 1 octave of the blues scale. You can extend that. You're not limited to just that 1 octave. If I want to go further, I can do that. It's not a problem. Okay. So your first practice point, and I'm going to go back to the jazzy organ sound and the style now. So we're going to get a little counting again, just a 4-beat counting, and I'm just going to run up and down the scale. Suddenly it will start to sound bluesy. Turn around chord, run up, down again. So we're starting to sound like we're playing the blues. That's the idea. That's the idea. But this is now where we can truly improvise, because what we now have is we have the set progression with our left hand that we can follow, and then we have the notes that we can play with in the right hand. But what we don't want to do is just run up and down them like I've just been doing. We can use any combination, any order. We can play chords, more than one note if we wanted to. So let me just go back to the overview. I can press the right button. No, that's not the wrong. No. There we go. Look, there it is. Got it. Got it. So I want you to just watch what I'm doing with the right hand mainly here. So we're going to count in, and we're going to go to variation 1, 2, 3. So all I'm doing there is I'm mixing up the notes. So I've just used the notes of this scale, but instead of playing them in that order, I'm mixing them up. And very importantly, I'm changing the timing. Now, this is a very important point that we'll come to in just a little while. Very, very important. We need to learn something called syncopation, which, as I say, we'll talk about in just a moment. So that's the, if I can remember which button to press. There's our, oh yeah, there we go. There we go, good. There's the major scale that we've looked at. Now, I just want to talk about this word riff. Underneath there, and because I haven't brought my glasses with me, which is my fault, sorry about that, everybody. I can't actually read those riffs that I've written out there. But those riffs are based on notes out of the major scale. Okay? So those riffs, and I can I make the first one out? Maybe I can actually. Oh, that's very. Oh my God, that's worse. Dear, oh dear, that's terrible. So let me just try that first one there. Here's the riff. 1, 2. Now, all a riff is a little musical phrase. Okay, it's a little musical phrase, and that phrase is based upon the notes of the major blues scale at the moment. Okay, that's what it's based on, and you can use that as a little melody. It's like a little melodic line. So this is what you're trying to create when you use the notes of the blues scale. You're trying to create that melodic feel about it. Now, there is a couple of important elements here. Especially if you use that jazzy sort of bluesy type note, that you need to create what's known as tension and resolve. Okay, so the tension comes about from that E flat clashing with the E, but then it needs to resolve back, and you'll notice that these little riffs seem to finish on the note of C. Yeah? So that means you start off, but your little riff has a completion point at the note of C. Okay? So let me just show you. Let's just start that rhythm again. C. Bluesy note. Finish on C. 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 So you're using that C note as almost like a little anchor. It's your little home note. You don't have to use C. You could use the G. That's quite good. That will work. D won't work very well because it's not really a sort of C type note. So we need to use some anchor notes against some tension notes. That's actually what we're trying to do here. Okay, so a riff, a little melodic line. They can be repeated. You've probably noticed I'm repeating these little riffs over and over again. Okay, and then sort of join them all together to make a bit of a continuous melody line. That's actually what we're trying to do. Okay, so you've noticed here I've called this the C major blues scale with riff examples. Let's look at now what's called a minor blues scale. Okay, I think that's on 6. If I could, yes, there we go. Now, this one will sound even more familiar to you. This is the one that most people use as a bluesy type scale. There's more notes in it, and there's more black notes in it, which actually is an important point because they, as we've just discovered, are tension notes, the black notes, and we have a real tension note in this particular scale, which we'll point out in a moment. So let me just run up the scale again. I'm going to start from this C this time. It's a bit deep down there, so I'm going to go up there. So here's the minor blues scale. Important point. This doesn't change your chord sequence at all. The chord sequence remains exactly the same. The minor nature is coming from your right hand. So here we go. We've got C. We've got E flat. We've got F. We've got G flat or F sharp. We've got G. We've got B flat. And we've got C. Now let me do that at a proper speed. Again, you may be familiar with that sound. That's a very common bluesy type sound. Yeah. Now, I mentioned we've got some more bluesy tension notes in this particular scale. We've still got the E flat. We've also got a B flat. Now, that's not too tense, the B flat, because in your chord of C7 you have a B flat note, so it's a little bit tense. But the real tension note here is this G flat or F sharp, depending on which way you want to look at it. And that is a real bluesy note. In fact, the blues guys call that the blue note. That's what it's actually known as. Okay. Now, we're doing exactly the same thing, so I'm jumping forward just a little bit here. We're going to just run up and down the scale. Practice point number 3. When we move on to the minor blues scale, just get used to running up and down the scale. That's how you practice it to start off with. It's not where we're finishing up, but let's just do the practice point, and we'll do a little introduction, and we're going to run up and down. Just 1 octave. 2 octaves this time. Here we go, down. Turn around chord. It's the wrong note there, baby. I'm going down. Back up again. So all I'm doing there is getting my right hand used to those notes in that order. But we don't want to use that order. We're going to break them up. Okay, so here's a sort of improvised minor blues, just using those notes in the right hand, but breaking them up. This time I'm going to add some chords in. I'm going to play some chords. A typical chord there could be those 3 notes, a G, B flat and C. And for those more observant amongst you, you will know that G, B flat and C are all in the chord of C7. Yeah? So we can do that. Let's do that. Turn around. There's my little riff. Finishing on C. C. Resolve. Turn around. is just created by using the notes from the minor blues scale. Okay. So, got to get the notes under your hand, got to get used to the hand positions, and then you can just mess around with them. 2 points. First point, you can combine the major blues scale and the minor blues scale. You don't have to use them independently. You can mix and match all of those notes. So that turns the scale into a huge selection of notes. It actually turns the scale into C, D, E flat, E, F, F sharp, G, A, B flat and C. Now that's most of the notes. In fact, there's only 3 notes missing, and that's a D flat, an A flat and a B. And believe it or not, you can even use those if you use them quite quickly, or if you use them in conjunction with the chords of your left hand. What do I mean by that? Well, I mentioned that B isn't in that combination of the 2 blues scales, but when I play a G7, I've got a B in the left hand. So when I'm playing a G7, I can actually use the B if I want to. It's there as another option. And even these C sharp and G sharp, not to be left out, even if you use them as very quick passing notes, they will actually work. Okay? Now, so have I just said you can use any notes you want to? Well, in a way, yes. In a way, yes. But you need to base it on those blues scales that we've just looked at. That will give you the original blues sound. Okay? Now, the final thing I want to talk to you about, just for the last 10 minutes or so before I clear off and hand over to Mr. Carmen, is syncopation. What? I can hear you shout. Well, syncopation is playing in a rhythmic style with your right hand. Now, in lots of ways, syncopation is not how we're taught to play. We're taught to play notes to the correct value and everything smoothly. Syncopation is the opposite of that. Syncopation is breaking things up into perhaps slightly more aggressive sounding phrases. Now, you may have noticed that I'm playing in quite an attacking style. I'm not playing particularly smoothly. I'm playing notes. So, long notes, short notes mixed together. And there are 2 basic formats to playing in a jazzy style. Now, this applies to all forms of jazz, actually, not only blues, but just standard jazz improvisation. So instead of playing quavers in a very smooth 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4, let's go 1. Okay, so we're going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And you can even use rests very effectively in this style of music. So if I want to go 2, 3, 4, this is all syncopation that we're almost playing, well, we are playing between beats rather than on the beat. And there's a very good chance you'll have been taught to always play on the beat, always play your quavers as 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and you want to do the opposite with this. A mixture of different lengths of notes. Use rests, use timing, rests. Very effective in this style of music. Now, I've done something rather silly here, which actually is also from the blues book. I think this is number 7. I'm not sure. Please let it. Oh, yes, here we go. I've done something rather silly here, which is the very basic tune, Merrily We Roll Along. Okay. Now, you can see the first 2 lines are actually the basic arrangement of Merrily We Roll Along. And if you play the piece of music, you've probably been taught to play it like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's have a look at lines 3 and 4 of this. And what I've done here is I've syncopated this silly little tune. So it goes. Okay, so important thing about syncopation, you have to keep the bar structure. So all the bars are exactly as the first version. You've got the same amount of bars, but it's the way the notes are phrased, for want of a better phrase. Oh, hang a minute, that was a bit odd, that was, wasn't it? Anyway, but the way the notes are phrased is completely different. And if I play this, this is going to sound silly. I know it is, but. Now let's play it jazzier. Now I'm going to add some E flats in out of the major scale, blues scale. Syncopation is a huge, huge subject, so I can't cover it in 10 or 15 minutes here. But I hope that gives you a little flavour that the rhythm that you inject into your right hand, the melody hand, is all important in this style. Okay? Well, believe it or not, that's just about the end of my little slot here. I'm probably going to go to completely the wrong screen now, but let me just see if I can do. Oh, look at that. So I'm just going to finish with a little piece of blues music that I put together, which just uses some riffs. Now, this is a completely different accompaniment style. This is the organ blues shuffle. And I'm still going to use this jazzy organ sound. But this is just a couple of riffs that I've put together with this hand, okay, to make sort of a pretend little melody. And the riff is this. That's riff number 1. I'm just running up, which is actually from the F major blues scale. And then I'm doing this. And I'm resolving on the F note, because remember we're in the key of F. So F is my resolve note. Okay? So here we go. Now, I know, because I've played this before, that actually my intro 1 follows a 12-bar pattern in the intro and in the ending. So I'm able to make use of those in this particular piece of music. So here we go. This is just my little F blues, for want of a better phrase. It goes a bit like this. So that's a chord of F, B flat. So there's just something to finish off with my little spot here. It's only a very basic introduction. There are lots of different variations of the accompaniment pattern that you can put in, some of which we were doing there, and there's lots of different things you can do with your melodic right hand as well. I hope you've enjoyed my little section here today, and we're now going to turn into complete chaos because I'm going to get off and Paul Carman's going to get on, and it's all going to go a bit to pot now, isn't it, Paul?
Probably. Yeah.
Probably. Here we go. Come on then.
Take your headphones off.
Oh yeah, I've got to take my headphones off. Yeah, that's a good point.
Thanks, Andy.
You're very
Thank you very much indeed. Hi, everybody. Good to be back with you. And thanks, Andy, for coming over once again.
You're very welcome.
Cost me a fortune, but well worth it. Well worth it. I think what Andy's just shown you, and this isn't us begging for money, genuinely, but look, everything that Andy's told you and a lot more are available in a book to download from our website. It's the basic sort of blues book, Introduction to the Blues. It's something we would urge you if you're interested in doing that sort of music, and even if you're not, you're learning another skill, and that's what this whole thing's about. Is just we're passing on information, and I've said this a million times, but you've got to meet us halfway and actually have a go at these things. You know, we can keep the information coming. That's not a problem. I've got a pupil who's having a go at the blues at the minute, and it's teaching him lots of things. It's teaching keyboard geography, you know, where different notes are on the keyboard, playing in different octaves. It's teaching a finger dexterity, getting the right fingers, and it's teaching him that basic 12-bar blues as well. And he's getting a lot of pleasure out of it, and within 2 or 3 weeks of concentrating on it, he's now improvising, which is brilliant, you know, and that's all we ask for, really. I'm going to probably spend 20 minutes or so with you. I just want to tempt you with another little thing, and this has come about really from questions from customers, really. And it's a case of, let me just pop this in. There we go. I've got the right sounds in now. People keep watching us play and say, you know, you're playing different chords to us. How do you know what chords to play? Well, I've done this in the magazine, but I'm just going to go over it in just a little bit more detail. And I just want to talk about something called a 2-5-1. Now, that might sound totally alien to you, but believe me, it's probably the most used and the most useful chord sequence you will learn if you want to embellish your playing, particularly on jazz and swing type of playing. But we're going to use it on a couple of ballads today, because I just want to show you how you can take the simplest piece of music and transform it. Right, let me just pop my headphones on. And like Andy, I've got to find which one is which now. There we go. Okay, all I've got here is a very simple first page of Unchained Melody. So we've got... lovely tune. And if we were to put the chords to it, we won't put any rhythm to it at the minute. Just G chord, go into E minor, go into C major 7, D7. And it takes you back to the G. And pretty much that's the main sort of chord pattern in it. Now, what I want to talk about to start with, we mentioned a 2-5-1. On this first little piece, I just want to show you what I'm going to call a 5-1. Now, let me explain what that means. You need to look at the chord you are about to change to. In other words, the target chord that you're going to. So we're starting on G. So our next target chord is E minor. Now, I can put a chord in that will naturally resolve to that E minor, and it will all of a sudden elevate it into something totally, well, a lot more professional. Let me put it that way. So what chord do we need? We need 5 up from the E, because E is our target chord. If we go 5 notes up, we get to B. And all you need to do is convert that single note into a dominant 7th chord, or just a 7th chord. So B7 will be that mystery chord that we can put in. So on the melody at the end of bar 1, where you can see that A, we can put a B7 chord there. Hope you'll agree that's elevated it now into something a lot more special. Now, it works beautifully because the A on the melody is actually one of the notes in the B7 chord. So we know we're not going to get a clash. This will work probably, let's say, 90% of the time. I'm going to give you an example in a minute where it definitely won't work. And the other thing I'm going to say before I go any further, once you've mastered this, please, please, please don't do it on every chord change, because it then doesn't become special and actually it just becomes a bit of a mess. But on that first one, to put that B7 in is lovely. Now the next one, our target chord is C major 7, so it's a C chord. Let's go 5 up from C. We've got G, so we could put a G7. And I'll do it just for the sakes of this little exercise now. So we're starting on our G. We're going to put our B7 chord in to our E minor. Now let's put the G7 in. And like I say, what we're doing, we're elevating this from a simple top line and chord symbol copy almost into something that a professional would play. And if you pick a simple tune and you only put this in, let's say, twice or 3 times during the piece, all of a sudden you've created your own arrangement. You know, you're not relying on everything that's there. I said I'd give you an example where it won't work. If you look at the last bar on the second line, it's an E minor, and it's going to a D chord. So D is our target chord. So let's go 5 up from D. That brings us to A. So my theory would say, yep, we'll put an A7 chord, and that will work. But we've got a problem. The melody goes like this. The melody's got a C natural in it. A7 has got a C sharp in it. And I'll play it to prove it, but believe me, it will sound horrendous. Andy thinks it sounds good. But no, it just doesn't work because the melody note is clashing with the chord there. So that would be a case where we'd just leave it as it is. But what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to put a little style on. So I'm using an orchestral ballad style here. I'm just going to play just those first sort of 8-9 bars as it's written, and then we'll go back and we'll do it with our what we call the 5-1 sequence. So this is as it's written. Now we'll go back and put our chords in. There you go. Hopefully you can see that that's elevated that music. It has made it something a lot more special. And if we don't overdo it, it's the bit that if you've ever been to hear a professional player, sometimes they make your ears prick up. They do something that you don't expect to hear. And that's, for me, that's what makes music so interesting, because if everybody played this exactly the same, life would get boring. When you hear different orchestras play different songs, they stamp their own little mark on it. And that's all about arranging. And we happen to have a book on arranging as well. that was off the cuff, but I thought I'd get it in. These things, look, we're doing this for one reason and one reason alone. We want your playing to improve. And hopefully you want your playing to improve. That's what we're all doing this for. Andy and I, we haven't stood still. We're still learning new things all the time. And it's what keeps your enjoyment in this world of sort of keyboard playing. So, if you remember that, you look at the chord that you're going to, you go 5 up from that note and make it a dominant 7th chord. It's as simple as that, if you can remember that rule. Now what I'm going to do is take it to the next level. So let's put our next little screen up. There we go. Now I've scribbled a few extra chords in, and you can tell which I've written because it's in the scrawly handwriting on my iPad screen. So help me make it through the night. Again, lovely little ballad, and I've picked a couple of slow songs because it means it's not that difficult to have a go at slotting these extra chords in. What we looked at in Unchained Melody was a 5-1, but right at the beginning, I spoke to you about a 2-5-1. Now, don't be put off. All we've got to do this time is, instead of just playing the 5 chord before we go to our target chord, you play the 2nd chord, then the 5 chord, and then to your target chord. But there's a little rule here. The 2nd chord will always be a minor 7th, and we know from our previous exercise the 5 chord is always a 7th chord. So it's minor 7th, 7th, and that will take you to your target chord. So if we look at this first line on Help Me Make It Through the Night, actually, I hate using the word boring, but it is, because it stays on the same chord for 3 bars. And without any rhythm, it's just like this. Then it goes to G, but then it goes back to the D chord again. Now, all that time we're staying on that D chord, we can actually still do a 2-5-1 because my target chord on that first line still remains the D, but let's have a look. The 2nd from D is an E, and we said we make that a minor 7th. Hence, I've written E minor 7. The 5 up from D is an A, and we said that's got to be a 7th chord. So E minor 7 followed by A7, then takes us to our D chord, and it's going to break those first 3 bars up. So instead of this, just holding the D chord, we're now going to have this. Now our next target chord is a G. You'll see that on the 2nd line of the music. So the 2nd from the G is A. So remember our rule, we have to make it a minor 7th, so it's A minor 7th. 5 up from G is a D. We make it a D7. So instead of just staying on the D like this, let's put our 2-5-1 in. So we're on the D. Now we're lucky here because our next chord is E minor. That's the one we had in Unchained Melody. And we played a B7. So let's try slotting the B7 in there. So let's go back to the beginning of the second line. Let's put our B7 in. And here's another one. I've put an E7. Yeah, I've put it over a G sharp bass. It doesn't matter. Let's just do E7 for now because our target chord is A7 or an A chord. So 5 up from there is E. So we can pop an E7 in. So we'll do it from the E minor. I hope you can see and hear what's happening here. I'm going to do exactly the same as I did with Unchained Melody. I'm just going to play it through in its pure state as it was written. So it's D chord, changing to a D, back to the... Sorry, changing to G, back to D, back to G, and then we've got an E minor, A7, and back to D. So what have we got? Four different chords in there. And I know you can argue, well, that's how it was written. But we're trying to elevate it to the next level. So let's just listen to it first, perfectly straight, and then I'll go back and I'll play it second time with our 2-5-1. And a couple of times we're just using the 5-1. So like with Andy's Blues where you could mix and match things, you can here. You just need to work on practicing the basic principles of it. So let's just use the same rhythm for simplicity's sake. So this is it as it's written without my chord changes. There you go. I really hope you can hear the difference because to me, I keep using the word elevate. It's elevated it from something quite basic into something really interesting. So I'd love you to practice the 5-1. And when you've got proficient with that, just try and look for the odd place in the music. And often it's where you have got a chord held for quite a long time. You can make it more interesting by putting that 2, 5 and 1 in there. So I'm keeping this brief today. You can watch this video back on YouTube. So if we've sort of flashed through anything and you want a little recap on it, you can do so. Let's just go back there. I hope you've enjoyed it again today. As always, I'd love to thank you all for joining us. We've had 25, 26 people on today, which is absolutely fine. I apologise if anybody didn't receive the email. I know Colin, I think it's Colin, has said he didn't get the email. We always just send out one of these blanket email messages. If you want to join us again on Friday, it'll be myself on Friday afternoon. We're back with Chord PA5X questions and answers. I've already had quite a few questions, which I will be attempting, I've used the word attempting to answer on Friday afternoon. If you've got any more questions and you want to email them in advance, if not, pop them up on the screen when we join you, and we'll do our best. What I'm going to say to you is, even if you don't own a PA5X, join us, because some of it will be relevant to other keyboards. So if you own a Genos, a lot of what we're talking about, actually, that they're so similar in what they actually are capable of doing. If you've got a Genos, please join us. Keep spreading the word, because for us to keep doing this, we need to build the audience up.
Just before we go, Paul, how much is the blues book?
Oh, yeah, the blues book. Andy's just reminded me. Thanks for prompting me. Listen, we joke a lot of times about these books. We've made them as cheap as we possibly can. I hate using the word cheap, but value for money. There's a good phrase. They're £3.99. To be honest, you can go down to Costa Coffee and pay more than that, can't you? Well, actually, the last time I went there, I paid more for the biscuit than that. About £6 for 2 shortbread biscuits. Anyway, I digress. We're enjoying doing these sessions. They're very informal. We hope you keep joining us and spread the word amongst your friends. If you go down the Keyboard Club, tell them about it. We will be on most Fridays. I can tell you that now. Friday is the good day for me. So most Fridays we'll be on at sort of 2:30 in the afternoon. Because I was away last week and Andy's going away next week, we've popped the extra one in this week. But if you just keep going to the Keyboard Academy YouTube site, you will see the upcoming webinars, because we always put them up there at least a week in advance. So all we can say is, on behalf of Andy and myself, thanks again for watching, and we look forward to seeing you hopefully on Friday, but at least sometime in the future. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.